Hello, and welcome to this latest edition of the American Guild of Organists Sioux Trails Chapter Summer Recital Series 2020. My name is Sean Connolly. I am the Director of Music and Organist at St. Mary Help of Christians Catholic Church here in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and I'm also the Education Officer for the Sioux Trails Chapter of the American Guild of Organists. This relatively brief program today is entitled Grandma's Attic Attacks. It is a celebration of the obscure and second tier of romantic organ music, and it is especially well suited for the historic organ at St. Mary's Church here in Sleepy Eye, which is a very significant historical instrument in this region and was perhaps one of the more significant instruments in the state at the time that it was built. It was originally built in 1907 by Bernard Schaefer, and then expanded in two times actually, in 1947 by the Wicks Organ Company of Highland, Illinois, where it attained its present disposition of 3 divisions rather than 2, and was placed in 2 chambers on opposite sides of the gallery, fully enclosed, which was the style at the time. And then it was restored very carefully again in 2011 by Alan Moe of Wadena, Minnesota, as well as being significantly modernized and having a few ranks added as well. So throughout all of that time, it's retained its character as a basically romantic instrument, and therefore is extremely well suited to the music that you're going to be hearing today, the music of some of my favorite obscure composers of the Romantic period. So without further ado, we'll get to the first piece, which is actually going to be a couple pieces by Gustav Merkel. And Merkel was a German organist and composer. He died in 1885, roughly contemporary to, say, Brahms or even to Rheinberger, kind of an heir to the Mendelssohnian legacy. And his music has been favorably compared to Rheinberger's in terms of its economy, in terms of its beauty even, and skill, craftsmanship, but he's even less known than Rheinberger, and that's kind of saying something. So he was a Lutheran, although he held posts at Catholic churches, most notably the cathedral in Dresden. So without further ado, here's a couple of short preludes by Gustav Merkel. Hope you enjoy. I'm sorry. I really hope you enjoyed those pieces by Gustav Merkel. Up next we have a chorale prelude by Dudley Buck. Dudley Buck was one of the great American organ virtuosi of the 19th century. He was in high esteem as a performer, as a composer. He was also an active church musician and had the distinction of being the first honorary president of the American Guild of Organists. So he's of a certain significance to our organization as well. The piece you're about to hear is from a set of 6 chorale preludes that he published as a help to student organists to learn obligato pedal playing. And so this is filled with pedantic advice, including the admonition that the running eighth notes are certainly not to be interpreted as triplets. Great care is to be taken against that. You know, a lot of people probably think Dudley Buck is very much of his time, and they'd probably not be entirely wrong, but I find a great deal of charm in his music still. It's worth noting the melodic differences in the Old 100th, as he has said it, compared to how we're accustomed to singing it today. So enjoy Dudley Buck's Prelude on the Old 100th. And now I hope you enjoyed that piece by Dudley Buck. We're going to move on from him to one of my favorite composers, one I think really deserves to be on a higher tier than he is, Josef Rheinberger. Rheinberger's music I just find beautifully crafted. It has wonderful counterpoint, and it sits very well on organs of all periods and kind of all styles. So this is the first in a series of Fugetten that he wrote. This is number 1 in D minor, and these are fuguettes in a strict style. hope you enjoyed that piece by Joseph Reinberger. And now we'll turn to an Italian-American composer. He was beginning to make his career in Italy when he was discovered by the pastor of St. Francis Xavier Church in New York City. He offered him a ticket and a 3-year contract to be his organist, and he accepted. So this is Pietro Jan, who would later go on to be appointed director of music at the Cathedral of St. Patrick in New York City. Extremely prestigious post. He would be instrumental in designing the Killian organ that's still in place there. He was a pretty prolific composer, but a lot of his work has fallen into obscurity, partly I think because it was such practical music that it really isn't something that you would normally hear at an organ recital. But this is from his first religious suite for organ. It's a very idiosyncratic take on O Come, Emmanuel, and it's within the reach of even the most recently converted pianists. So, without further ado, the music of Pietro Jan. The music of Pietro Jan. And now, lastly, I'd like to conclude my program for today with a piece by Charles Villiers Stanford, who was a famous British organist and composer. He was from Ireland, and he had the distinction as well of having been a classics major, like myself, although he seems to have inclined much more to music than to his classics studies, since he ranked 65th out of 66 in his examinations for his classics degree. But as a composer, he was absolutely first-rate, and this is the second of a collection of 6 short preludes and postludes on a theme of Orlando Gibbons. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thank you so much for attending this virtual recital. Thank you for supporting your local chapter of the American Guild of Organists and local musicians. We're very grateful. Have a wonderful and safe summer.